Hello, everyone. In this short video, I would like to share with you some information about the skills approach to leadership. Here I have the outline for the presentation. I will provide a brief description of this approach. We're going to look at the three-skill approach by Katz. We're going to discuss Mumford and colleagues model, and then we're going to look at some lessons learned. The skills approach to leadership is similar to the trait approach and that it focuses on the leader. If you think about different components of the leadership process, this approach also focuses on the leader, similarly to the trait approach. On the other hand, it differs from the trait approach in that we shift from the personality of the leader that we discussed in the trait approach to leadership to the abilities of the leader. It emphasizes the capabilities, in other words, the knowledge and skills that are needed for leadership. And the difference, again, between the trait approach with the skills approach is that skills can be learned and developed. So again, we're going to look at the two major studies, and we're going to start with the three-skill approach by Katz. And his research, Katz identified three distinct leadership skills. The technical skills encompass knowledge and proficiency in accomplishing a specific activity. For example, if somebody it's a computer programmer, that they have technical skills in order to complete a program. If somebody is working as an accountant and completing tax returns, then that person has technical skills in completing tax return. Also, Katz identified human or interpersonal skills. Those skills are related to knowledge and ability to work with people. In other words, the ability to create positive relationships with other people. And then the third skill is conceptual skill. There's the ability to work with ideas and concepts. So ability to think in the abstract, think about the future, think about different elements that could work together. In other words, when we think about technical skills, we're focusing on working with things. Think about human skills, working with people, and we think about conceptual skills, working with ideas. Katz also identified that these skills are required to a different degree at different levels in organization. Here is a graphical representation of these three skills that require the different levels of organizational hierarchy. At the supervisory level, the technical and human skills are needed to a higher degree than conceptual skills. So this makes sense. So think about this. If a supervisor supervises a group of 10 individuals who process insurance claims. If an individual employee who processes claims has a question, then they have to go, they go to ask questions related to some issues, they will go and ask their supervisor. Therefore, at the supervisor level, technical skills are necessary. At the same time, human skills are necessary because supervisors work daily with their employees. Therefore, they must have good human or interpersonal skills. At the middle level, management, all three types of skills are required. So they should know, the middle manager should know some aspects of the work that's being done by different units and the units that they're supervising. They have to have good human skills because they have to communicate or relate to people in the top level management and then supervisor level management. And also they have to have conceptual skill as they have to think a broader perspective than the individuals at the supervisor level. At the top level management, you can see that technical skills are not as necessary, but human skills and conceptual skills are a requirement. So they have to have human skills or interpersonal skills because they have to create positive relationships with people at middle level management. And also they have to interact a lot with outside stakeholders. And also they are required to think broadly, those conceptual skills, think in the abstract, creating a vision for the organization, position the organization for the future. So those are the three skills from the Katz's approach. Another model, which is a little bit more complicated, was developed by Mumford and colleagues, and their skill came from a study that was completed in 2000. And the main goal of the study was to identify leadership factors that lead to effective performance. And then performance here, they focused on problem-solving skills and then overall performance. So you can see right here, this model has some connection or relationship between skills and performance. And it's also called a capability model because it focuses on the relationship between a leader's knowledge and skills, or their capabilities, and a leader's performance. And basically the authors claim that capabilities can be developed through education and experience. Here is the model. It has there's 5 elements: the individual attributes, competencies, environmental influences, career experiences, and then leadership outcomes. And we're going to look at each of them individually. So we're going to start with the core of this model, the competencies model. So competencies include these 3 groups. The first one is problem-solving skills. Problem-solving skills are those skills that allow individuals to find novel solutions to problems. So that might include properly identifying the problem, then gathering information about the problem, identifying alternatives, evaluating alternatives, then understand how each of those alternatives would impact different constituents, then selecting the proper alternative, then implementing the alternatives. And then in the implementation process, we have to do a lot of planning. You have to identify who's going to do what, and then what type of resources we need. So there are a lot of skills that are related to the problem-solving skills. They are critical in order to have a good problem-solving and then high performance. The second element here is social judgment and social skills. And these skills are similar to interpersonal skills or people skills or human skills from Katz's model, but it's a little bit broader. And again, these skills focus on the ability to create positive relationship with others in the organization or outside of the organization. And the authors identify 4 distinct categories there. The first one is the perspective taking. And perspective taking, where we are focusing on leaders understanding the perspective of others towards a particular problem. So when they have to solve a problem, they have to understand how others view the problem. Also, social perceptiveness. It's a leader's awareness of what is happening in an organization and how people feel about different parts of organizational functioning. Then the third one is behavioral flexibility. This is capacity of a leader to adapt and change as the organizational environment changes. This is, you probably have noticed, there are similar elements in this area related to emotional intelligence that we've discussed in the video on trait approach to leadership. So behavioral flexibility is very important. So in addition to a person understanding what's happening, they have to adapt their behavior. And then social performance. Social performance encompasses a lot of skills that we commonly think about leadership skills. And those skills are related to overall umbrella of communication skills. For example, you might think about thinking about creating a vision and inspiring a shared vision. So the ability to communicate that vision, or persuasion skills, sometimes we call them. We talk about solving conflict. So those communication skills are very important in solving conflict. Giving feedback to employees, where performance evaluation and giving feedback, mentoring and coaching, and negotiation. So all of those elements really require effective communication skills. And so even active listening skills belong here. So those are the four groups of skills that I will include in the social judgment and social skills. And the last one is knowledge. So in order for a leader to be effective in solving problems, they must have some type of knowledge. So just want you to remember the difference between these three elements: data, information, and knowledge. So it's not enough just to have a lot of data, a lot of information. We have to be able to create some connections between data and information. And when we have meaningful connections between them, then we call that the individual has knowledge. That's what Mumford and colleagues call that schema. So that's the core of the model, or competencies. The second element of this model, the individual attributes, and it has four components here. The first one is general cognitive ability. This is the IQ of an individual. So we talked in the video on leadership traits, that intelligence, it's associated with leadership. So similarly here, but here we are saying that the individual attributes will impact competencies. We have an impact on development of competencies. So the ability, for example, to acquire information, process information, reason that information, be creative, those belong to general cognitive ability. The crystallized cognitive ability, it's also a form of intelligence, but if general cognitive ability, we're born with most of it, crystallized cognitive ability, it's developed over time. As individuals go through different experiences, they learn from those experiences, and then they have an increase in crystallized cognitive ability. Then we're focusing on motivation, so that willingness to take an initiative and then persevere in solving the problem. So motivation is a critical element here from individual perspective. And then personality, different types of personalities might impact the competencies different degree. For example, high self-esteem, high self-efficacy, openness to new experience, tolerance, self-confidence, perseverance. All of those are aspects of self or aspects of personality. Then they impact competencies. So right here we have the arrow. In addition to that, we have these two leadership outcomes that I mentioned earlier. So individual attributes impact competencies, competencies impact the leadership outcomes of problem solving. In other words, were we able to solve the problem efficiently and effectively, and then did we achieve an improvement in performance? In addition to these three elements, we have the career experiences, and career experiences impact individual attributes and competencies. As I mentioned earlier, as individuals are going through different experiences in their careers, then that could have an impact on crystallized cognitive ability and also on motivation. And then at the same time, they could have an impact on competence like problem solving, so learn new ways of solving problems, social judgment skills, improvement in your skills in developing positive relationship with others. And then clearly you learn more data information, and that leads to better knowledge. And then the last one is the environmental influences, and environmental influences could impact all of the other three elements in this model. So environmental influences could be internal or external. They could impact individual attributes, from crystallized cognitive ability to motivation, even personality to some extent, and obviously could impact problem-solving skills, social judgment, knowledge, and then could have a direct impact on environmental influences. So think about recent environmental influences. I mentioned earlier, could be internal or external, could be technology. Let's say we have a change in technology internally, but think about externally, the most recent impact of COVID-19 pandemic impacted all of these elements, impacted our motivation. So think about, we had to shift the way work was done from doing it in person in the office to doing it remotely. So we know motivation suffered as a result of that. crystallized cognitive ability was impacted. Problem-solving skills were changed. So we had to deal with completely different problems that we haven't dealt before. Social judgment, social skills. Now we have to deal with people remotely. How do we develop those relations, like team building exercises, and so on and so forth. So that the influence, in addition to the individual attributes, competencies, the solutions of the problem, the quality of the problem, and then performance overall. So that's the skills model by Mumford and colleagues. And so what are some lessons learned? Again, this is a leader-centric approach to leadership. And but the good news about this is that the skills can be learned. And leaders could become more effective by acquiring new skills. From Katz's model, yes, we learned that at different level in organizational hierarchy, then we require to have different types of skills. And therefore, for those of you who are at a different level of organization, try to develop those skills, as we mentioned earlier, at the lowest level, human skills and technical skills, middle level, all type of 3 skills, the conceptual, human, and technical. The higher level organization probably have to have very good human skills or interpersonal skills, and then high conceptual skills. From a Mumford's perspective, we really know that performance in a unit, it's impacted by different competencies. So in order to be successful, leaders should have good problem-solving skills, good social judgment skills, and they have a high amount of knowledge. And we know that these are influenced by our IQ or intellectual ability or cognitive ability, but also we have to know that we could develop our crystallized cognitive ability over time and then put ourselves in uncomfortable situations where we're going to push ourselves, develop motivation, and then understand our personality is very important. And the last one, we have to be aware that what's happening around us could impact all of our attributes and competencies, and then the outcomes, and then career experiences are important. That's why it's very important that leaders or the aspiring leaders should take advantage of different opportunities for training and development, whether it's a formalized training that organizations are doing, where the other professional organizations are doing, or just on-the-job training. If it's on-the-job training, that my recommendation would be for you to take initiative and then ask for opportunities to participate in projects that you haven't done before, where you're going to test your skills and then you're going to acquire new skills. And from there, similarly to what I mentioned in the video on trade approach to leadership, engage in reflection. Engage in reflection, reflect on your experiences, identify lessons learned, talk to other people, and then that will have a positive impact on all of the competencies that we've discussed in this video. That's it for now. So if you have any questions or comments, please write them at the bottom of this video. Thank you.